Welcome to this three-part tutorial video on the WPO widgets. My name is Sylvain Paillard and I'm the co-founder of Boxalino as well as the CTO. And I will be happy to go deep in these videos to really understand how you can configure widgets. These videos are a deep dive into the widgets and not an introduction video in the general Boxalino Winning Interactions administration environment. We have a video about such introduction that I would definitely recommend to watch prior to watch these three parts videos about widgets, as the concept of widget is introduced in that video, as well as other very important concepts as the narratives. So in this first part, we will look into the use cases of the widgets, which are either conditional or linear. So we will explore the difference between conditional and linear use cases. And we'll do a deep dive into filters, rankers, and scorers. The filters, rankers, and scorers concept have been addressed in the introduction video, but we will look at them much more in detail in this first part. So we are here in the main administration of Boxalino. And there we can see all of the different WPOs or widget and page optimizers. As you can see, they are structured in rows. And in the bottom row here, we have the welcome, which is for product suggestions on the start page, the search and navi, which is for the inside search and the product listing pages, the upsell, which is for the similar and other product suggestions on the product detail page, the cross-sell, which is for cross-selling product suggestions on the PDP after the user clicks on the add to basket, that they appear in an overlay or in the basket page, the rebuy, which are product suggestions that appear on the account page, and the individualize, which are product suggestions that appear in the email. The way to configure all of these 6 widgets is exactly the same, except that their context will change a little bit. So if we look at the context is defined mainly by the column in which these widgets are. So the welcome is in the awareness column, which means that these are for pages which are welcome pages, landing pages, home page on your website. Pages where there is very little or no context at all. And by context, we mean that when the user comes to the home page, he's not in a specific product detail page, he's not on a specific category page. So basically, any of your offering could apply to him from the context of the page. Then we move to the consideration, which basically means that the visitor is starting to looking for a product. So he has selected a certain category or certain brand, or he has made a search. Then he's in evaluation, so he's looking at a specific product detail page, and there we can show to the user things that are relevant according to the page he's looking at. And then we have the purchase, where the user started to put products in the basket. Then if the user is logged in and goes to my account page, then he's in the rebuy, which is in the loyalty page, which is specifically for cases where the user is currently on the website and he's in his account section, or at least he's logged in. And finally, the individualize, which is in the relationship column, which means that he's not currently on the website, but you can reach out to him by sending a message, like for instance, an email. We will not discuss in this video any of the other levels, like promote, find, read, extend, profile, retarget. They are fundamentally the same, but they are not specifically speaking about products. So they are different in that extent. But for the sake of this video and for the sake of understanding the basic of the widget, we will stick with this first line. So here I'm going to select the welcome WPO, which basically means that I would like to see the widgets that are connected to the product recommendation on the start page. In this case, we're going to mainly look at the home page. There we can see the list of the different widgets. We have one called home, another home bestseller, another home new, another home perso. And I will go into this home perso widget to look at how it is structured and how we can modify it. So now what we realize is that we have here a very simple strategy which actually is not personalized at all. So here we have the logic that the product must have a price which is bigger than 0, that the product must have a stock which is bigger or equal to 1, and that we will show the products that have a high all-time product sales count first compared to others. This base example was addressed in depth in the introduction video, so I will just take it as a starting point. If you want more introduction detail about this, you can watch the first video. So here, what we will see is really more in depth what makes each of these use cases. So when I open a use case, in this case a filter use case, there we can see that we have the values, the settings, and the advanced tab. This is true for all use cases. All use cases will always have these 3 tabs. Doesn't matter if they are a filter, a ranker, or a scorer. So we have seen in the last video what filters, rankers, and scorers basically mean. Again, for this initial concept, I will refer you to the introduction video for the detail. Let's assume that we understand, at least at a basic level, what these things mean and what they do. Now, one thing which is important to understand is that some of these use cases will be called conditionals, and other of these use cases will be linear. Now, here what we can see is that we have 2 conditional use cases with the price and the stock. And we can see that because here we can move this to be a ranker, to be a scorer. We can move this to be a filter, to be a scorer. But here, in this all-time product sales count, we have actually only the possibility to put it to a ranker, but not to a filter. And that's an important concept to understand. So let's address it a little bit. The price and the stock use cases are conditional for the simple reason that their evaluation is either true or false. That means that the product either has a price at 0 or bigger than 0. It's either true or false. The stock is either bigger or equal to 1 or not. It's either true or false. These 2, as we discussed, are conditional. Now, this one is not. This one is a linear one. Why? Because here we have a field which indicates the number of times the product was bought. It's not that the product was bought or not bought, which would make it conditional. It's the fact that we have a number from 0 to the maximum amount that has occurred so far, and the product has a certain value in that scale. Therefore, it cannot be a filter. And that's actually why we see it cannot be moved to a filter, because a filter must be conditional. A filter is either true or false. A filter can remove products or keep products in the result lists. So that's an important concept. Now, what does it mean then that it is a linear one? Well, it means that we are taking a value which is basically between the minimum and the maximum. We will see there are actually different options for that. But we're going to take a value which is between the minimum and the maximum. And we are going to provide a score, which is a number between 0 and the score, which is defined here. So what that means is that a product which is at the minimum will have 0 over this 500, and a product which is at the maximum, maybe it was sold, I don't know, 10,000 times, and there's no product which has been sold more than that, then it would get the full 500. And this is basically this fundamental difference between the conditional and the linear use cases. And the linear use cases, they can define different types of minimum and maximum thresholds. So let's look quickly at this point. So here, as you can see, we have a minimum value of -10 and a maximum value of -90. The idea of using minimum and maximum with negative values is to specify to the system we want to have dynamic thresholds. So for instance, if I would put here 0 and 5,000, that would mean that any product which has been sold never would get 0. Any product which have been sold 5,000 times or more will get the full 500 points. And let's say a product that has been sold 2,500 times will get half of the indicated 500 points and therefore 250 points. Now, the problem with that approach is that you keep selling products all the time. So the maximum should not be used as a fixed threshold. It should be dynamic. Now, there are different ways to define these dynamic cases with negative values. One of them is to put -1 in both cases. And -1 will mean that it will take the absolute minimum and the absolute maximum as the range. Now, that might seem as the quite logical value to put, but it's actually not our best practice. Our best practice is what we had before with this -10 and this -90. And the reason is because the -10 and -90 are based with what is called in statistics percentiles. So you probably have heard about the difference between the average and the median. So the average income, for instance, is what is the average amount of money people make, while the median income is what is the amount of money people make where there are as many people below than above this line. Now, the percentiles is the same idea, but with more precise values. So the 10th percentiles, this -10, means that we will consider any product that has been sold as one of the 10% of the products that has been sold the least. So basically the 10% of the worst selling product will all have 0, and then the range will start. Then the -90 is for the 90th percentile, which means that all of the products that have been sold in the 10% the most will all receive the full points. They will all receive the full 500 points exactly, with no differentiations. And all of the products that have been sold between the 10th percentiles and the 90th percentiles will get the value which is the linear position according to these two points. So again, a product that would have been sold in the middle of that range would actually get 250 points. Now, why do we do that? Why don't we just take the maximum and the minimum value overall? And that's because of the distribution. You might have a few products, maybe 10 or 20 products, that are sold a lot. And then everything else which is in proportion sold very little. So if you have like 10 products sold 10,000 times, and then most of the products are sold between 20 and 50 times. Well, if you take a range between 0 and 10,000, then almost everything, including very good selling product at 60, would get something very close to 0. And this is what we prevent with these 10th and 90th percentiles value here. So this is already a bit in the detail of use cases, but very important to understand, because once you understood that, you understood how you can move these elements from one place to the other. So we can see that in action. So for instance, I can say for this stock, I don't want it to be a ranker, I want it to be a filter. And then I can click here. And now the stock, as you can see, appears as a filter as well, and there's nothing appearing in the rankers anymore. I can do the opposite. I can say, well, actually, the fact the product is in stock bigger than 1 is not that important, and I'm going to move it into the scorer. And by default, we can see that this scorer will also receive the default weight of 500. So that basically means that each use case gives a maximum of 500 points. Now, I might decide, yeah, that the stock is actually more important than this, so I'm going to put it higher, and then it will take the lead and appear at the top, or I can say that it should be less important, and then it will appear below that point. Let's reset it as a ranker for now, but this is basically the logic. I can do the opposite as well. I can say that this actually is also a ranker, move it to the ranker, and now I have 2 ranker at 100,000. There you can see that the scale is clearly changing, and then I can say, well, actually that this one is much more important than the other. So I put this one at 500,000 and this one as 100,000, which would then make them compete as ranker versus as scorer. Now let's put it back. Let's put it back to what it was as well here. And okay. So now we have seen a little bit more in depth what differentiate these different type of use cases. And in complement with the concept of the filters, the rankers, and the scorers, then we have now a good idea of what really is a use case and all of the different types of use cases that we will have. In the filters, we can see that there is here this setting parameter, which indicates whether we have a system filter. And if I set this as a system filter, then it would disappear from the filter, but actually be here in the list of the system filters. So system filters are hidden unless I click on this tab, but they actually still very well exist. There are 2 reasons to set system filters. The first is that you might want to define some of the filters in a very technical way for technical reasons, like for instance, we have pushed to Boxalino many products that are inactive, but obviously we don't want to recommend something which is inactive, so we set it as a system filter, and it doesn't appear as an actual filter in the list. But there is another reason for that, and that brings us to another subtlety of the widgets. So for most widgets, the filters can be relaxed. For the search and navigation widgets, that's not the case. So let's discuss that point slightly. So if I am setting this not as a system filter, and I have this price here defined, that means that as I am in the home personalization, so I'm not in a search WPO, I'm in the welcome WPO, there the filters actually can be relaxed. So if we take again the example like before, where we have 2 filters, like here, let's put the stock also as a filter. So we have 2 filters, and these filters are ordered. So I can change the order, as you can see here. I can make the stock go up or down the other one. The system needs to provide recommendations. So you have a block of product recommendation on your homepage. You do not want this block to be empty. You want it to be filled with exactly the number of position that you ask for. As long as all of your filters make that possible, they will all apply. So let's say that you are asking for 8 recommendations on the homepage for that home personalization widget. Then it's enough that there is 8 products in total or more, which both have a price bigger than 0 and a stock bigger or equal to 1, so that you would see all of these products matching the filters. But let's assume for a second that there are many products which price is bigger than 0, but there's only 3 products which stock is equal or bigger than 1. Then we would have a problem, because if the system applies both filters, then it would actually only find 3 products. But that's not what you want, because you have 8 positions in your product recommendations and you would like these 8 product recommendations to appear. So what the system will do is it will relax the filter, and it will relax the filters from the bottom up. So it means that it will first show these 3 products that have both filters matching, but then it would show actually 5 products that match the first filter but do not match the second filter. So it will actually relax or remove one of the filters to fill up the recommendations to match the numbers that you're asking for. Now, if I set this price as a system filter and this stock as a system filter, so if I set both as system filters, they cannot be removed. So that means that it's a way to say to the system, yes, you have to relax filters as much as you can, but not these ones. And if it would happen that these ones limit the scope to be less than these 8, then so be it, we will show less than 8. So that's basically the difference between a system filter and a normal filter. The rankers and the scorers, they don't have such subtleties. And the rankers and the scorers, they don't have these system aspects, and they're just ordered by their weight so that you can see the most important one first. But in fact, their order doesn't really matter otherwise. It's just an indication of their size relative to the others. But it does matter for the filters in which order you put them. And that's why you have these ordering possibilities here to change the order, which do not exist in the other systems in the same way. Okay. Now, all of them, filters, rankers, and scorers, have this inactive tab. This is basically, let's say that you're defining a use case and you're not really happy with the way it works yet. You would like to continue working on other things, but you don't want to lose it completely. So you can change it to be inactive, then it would disappear, but actually you will find it here in the list of inactive use cases. And then you can reactivate it whenever you want, and then it appears here. So that's just a simple way to not have to delete things. Of course, you can delete use cases if you don't want them with this delete button on the right, but you can also simply inactivate them and reactivate them at a later stage. And that's the same for rankers, for scorers, and for others.